Were you expecting any backlash when they were announced? How early in their career were you working with them? With your job then now, are you primarily working on download?
I'd say it's 50-50. My role is really hybrid in that way that because I wasn't hired to do download, I'm hired to do my main role, which is currently senior UK tour executive. And 50% of my time is then me having to juggle how I then also do download. I mean, the download team, we all have to do the same thing. Everyone on that team is their only job isn't download, at least in the booking team. And Cam, for example, he's now the head of the booking team, but he's also a promoter at Live Nation. So luckily, I think throughout the year, it ebbs and flows in terms of right now, I'd say 90% of my job is download because it's 3 weeks away. Maybe in September, touring's really, really demanding. So we do a bit less of download, but overall, I'd say it's 50%.
How early does that booking start? Is this sort of like a rolling thing?
So much earlier than you'd imagine. So we started working on 2026 headliners maybe in December. So way ahead of 2025 even happening.
Right.
And I remember last year we finished the festival and we had a festival call, like a meeting with all 5 of us on Monday morning. So I was like, this really truly never stops. And you know what is the competition, because every other festival is doing the same thing.
Yeah, of course. That's quite crazy with this year's lineup then, because you can look at someone like Green Day and say, yeah, that's in 2 years they're still going to be huge because they have been forever. But then with someone like Sleep Token, how could you have seen that 2 years ago?
Sleep Token was an artist that Live Nation already worked with. Like, they played at the Great Escape Showcase. They did their first few shows with, like, they've been on our radar for a really long time. And I guess part of it is just belief, but also tracking how quickly they were growing, even at the really small stages. It's not a foolproof approach, but it was a really early indicator. And we genuinely were happy to see that we had just announced them as headliner, but then their tour numbers for the November tour were already really, really high. So we were feeling quite safe by that point. Having said that, there's still that period where you do have them locked in, even if they're not announced, where maybe we didn't have those tour numbers immediately. So there was some trust and hope, and hoping that the buzz around it was going to explode as much as it did.
I mean, the buzz has been incredible, and it has like continued like consistently. They just keep getting bigger. They've even had their number ones now. If that hadn't happened, would you have just been like, okay, this year we have a small headline?
Do you know, I don't know how to answer that question because we've never had that situation before. I'm like, I hope we always avoid it, but I think there will always be a large amount of people that enjoy that set, whether it's the full sold out festival audience or not. It's still a festival that caters to a really wide number of genres and like people's interests. And I don't think we'd ever book someone that would just literally be totally wrong. So I just think it's what degree of success rather than it was a total failure. Because then I think we really would need to relook at how we book.
I guess this time it just has worked out amazingly. In the past, there's obviously been a lot of bands that are just they've been big for a long time and it's sort of stable. I guess taking that risk on the newer ones blowing up is what creates those moments that everyone thinks are special. Other than it just being like, oh, it's the same old shit. We know what we're getting.
And some people want to see that, and I think people enjoy those sets, but they don't feel the buzz of the announcement. And Download has many critics, even though they love the festival. They're super vocal because they feel like they own it, and they do. But I guess we learn from every year's risk level, and Bring Me the Horizon, massive. It's not comparable, but putting them in the headliner slot for the first time was a risk of sorts. Yeah. And it paid off really, really, really well. Does that then have a knock-on effect to how you then decide to take a slightly greater risk with Sleep Token? Yes. So kind of for us, it's an incremental level of like learning and experimenting that thus far seems to have worked.
When you book one of these new ones, what's the sort of the difference in the process between booking a legacy in sense of if you've got a legacy band, they've played big shows and they've played festivals and they've got their sets and they know what's going on stage. My assumption is that someone like Sleep Token that's not done something on that scale, they're doing it for the first time, they're having to build everything for the first time. Is that something that you're part of the process of? Or do you just leave it to them in the hope that they turn up with something cool on the day? Like using Bring Me as the example, their stage was really cool. I don't know whether it was the first time they'd had a stage that big, but they definitely fucking brought it.
They've always had great staging. I know for a fact they specifically knew that it had to be up like 10 levels for download, and that's what we saw. We, as festival, we are not part of like influencing that. We just facilitate because your staging is very much creative license, right? No more than we would recommend what set list you play or how you write your song. As promoters who've worked with those acts in our other role for many years, then there is a lot of feedback of what works best for the staging of a band that's developing like Sleep Token. I mean, a lot of it's not to claim the idea in any way, but people like Andy and Cam have been around a long time and do have discussions with management and with artists about ideas and cool stuff they saw other bands do and like what would work well for a particular song, and download just aims to facilitate whatever the end result is. I think, interestingly, with a lot of bands who haven't played before, they feel the weight of presenting something incredible, maybe more than a legacy act does. So I think they're often the ones that might bring the most innovative or blowout production they can think of because it's their first.
With Sleep Token again, how early in their career were you working with them?
So I think I started working with Camp. I was there at the Great Escape when they played, and the Great Escape is like breaking bands, tiny, like 200 cap dingy venue. I was there. I can't really remember if I was working with them at that time, but for sure when they played Lafayette. They did like sort of a stripped back Lafayette set. God, I wish I could remember the year. I can't. But from then on, I was part of the team working on them with Cam and have just watched them do every show since. And we work really closely with management. Cam has a great relationship with the band, and I think it will continue.
Were you expecting any backlash when they were announced?
Do you know what? I think I always expect backlash for literally any booking at this point. But I think we were not in a negative way, just like nervous for how much people maybe wouldn't get it, and were generally pleasantly surprised. And what we saw more so is that anyone who was being quite negative, even if some of their points are valid or not, is kind of not the point. It wasn't anyone within the company or management or the band that had to kind of go in and correct any misconceptions. It was all self kind of moderation by the pool of fans within whatever platform they were talking on. So I just thought, if there's someone being like terrible booking and there's 8 people being like, they're amazing, have you even listened? Why not just because they're new? That was all we needed to see.
Yeah, I guess you sort of laughed at that as well, so it probably calmed.
Yeah, I'm like, thank God someone's saying the stuff we want to say, because I'm not allowed to go in and argue with someone on a download forum. Do you know what I mean? But it's nice to see it when it's rectified.
How many bands, sort of roughly give or take, are considered as headlines?
It kind of depends really because there's honestly 1,000 things that have to align for a headliner to lock in a festival play. So it could be that in the dream scenario, your first 3 approaches are your 3 confirmed acts. We've definitely had it where the number maybe has gone up to like in the 20s, and that's because the time period didn't work for them, or their album campaign changed, or for whatever reason that member isn't free that day. So the number could just vary massively, although it's capped by the amount of bands that actually are of a size that could headline.
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's not that many in the grand scheme of things, I guess. Someone like Korn have played like 1 billion times on 1 billion stages all over the world. Like, they know what they're doing inside out. The newer ones, I mean, Sleep Token really being the example, being so new to it. Do you worry that they're not going to be able to command that size of crowd?
No, I mean, because I kind of believe in the act anyway, but because I've seen them play your Wembleys, your O2s, multiple O2s. So it's just, no, it's not that big a punt. Once you go from 20,000 to 50,000, I don't think the difference is huge in terms of whether you are commanding the whole room and the atmosphere is electric. That will translate really well into whatever size that festival crowd is.